Long before the pyramids rose from the sands of Egypt, long before Rome commanded the Mediterranean, there was a city whispered only in myths, Atlantis. Plato-Euro-s dialogues mentioned it in passing, a proud island empire that defied the gods and sank beneath the sea in a single day and night. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as allegory, a cautionary tale about arrogance and divine punishment. Yet among the ruins of history, whispers persisted that Atlantis was real Euro, that fragments of its truth survived, scattered across civilizations that remembered only in fragments, in stories of a golden age swallowed by waves. Dr. Elias Merrick had spent his entire life chasing shadows. An archaeologist by profession, but more a dreamer than most, he was obsessed with myths that blurred into history. His colleagues mocked him as a romantic, a man who saw myths not as allegories but as memories. For years, he studied the ancient maps, the trade routes, the geological shifts beneath the Atlantic. And in the summer of 2022, his obsession bore fruit. Off the coast of the Azores, strange sonar readings suggested an impossible structure, a massive circular foundation resting deep beneath the ocean, far older than any known ruin. The discovery was accidental Euro. Fishermen had complained of sonar interference in the area, their nets tangling inexplicably, as though the sea itself resisted them. But when Elias saw the readings, his heart raced. It matched Plato-Euro-s description Euro, concentric rings of land and sea, radiating from a central hub. Euro o it can Euro tb, Euro his assistant murmured. Elias only smiled. Euro o it has to be. Euro with funding from a private historical foundation, a team assembled, marine engineers, divers, and historians. Among them was Dr. Layla Noor, an Egyptian epigrapher specializing in undeciphered scripts. She had her doubts about Atlantis but respected Elias Euro's passion. Euro if this is a myth, Euro she told him aboard their research vessel, Euro o then let us prove it false. And if it is not Euro she didn't Euro t finish the sentence. They both knew what it meant. The expedition descended into the depths. Submersibles swept across the ocean floor, lights piercing through endless blackness until stone emerged Euro, vast stone blocks arranged in patterns no natural process could explain. Pillars half buried in silt, stairs leading nowhere, walls etched with faint carvings blurred by millennia of salt. When the first camera feed lit up the monitors, silence filled the control room. Euro oemi god, Euro someone whispered. The city was real. Over weeks, the team mapped the ruins. It sprawled wider than anyone expected, a metropolis the size of a modern capital, drowned in darkness but eerily preserved. Yet at the center lay something stranger, a dome-like structure, intact, sealed by stone plates that shimmered faintly under the lights, as if metallic veins ran through them. Unlike the other ruins, this dome had resisted time, pressure, and the sea Euro's hunger. It called to them like a heart still beating. Elias could not sleep. In his cabin, he pored over Plato-Euro's words again and again. Euro in the center, a temple to Poseidon, god of the sea, encircled by walls of gold and orichalcum, shining like fire. Euro but this was no temple. It was something older, stranger. One night, Layla joined him, holding a tablet she had been translating. They had recovered it from a smaller ruin at the city Euro's edge, a slab covered in an unknown script. Euro ita Euro's not Greek. Euro she whispered. Euro ita Euro's not Egyptian. Ida Euro's older than both. But I found parallels Euro, symbols of stars, cycles, something about a voice that guides kings. Euro Elias frowned. Euro a voice. Euro she nodded. Euro o the word recurs. A voice of metal. A voice that never dies. Euro the next morning, the team breached the dome. Charges cleared centuries of silt, and divers pried open a massive stone seal. What lay inside was not a temple but a chamber, dry and untouched, as though time itself had recoiled. Strange mechanisms lined the walls, gears fused with crystals, inscriptions etched into metal plates. At the center rose a pedestal, and on it, a sphere of glass and bronze, veins of silver running across its surface. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, reverent, fearful. Finally, Elias whispered, Euro o the oracle. Euro the object was unlike anything they had ever seen. Euro, part machine, part jewel, part living presence. When they brought instruments close, compasses spun wildly, sensors glitched, and one diver swore he heard faint whispers echoing through his helmet. €s just the comms, another said nervously. But in their eyes, fear lingered. They transported the sphere to their surface lab. Under bright lights, its true beauty emerged, a lattice of interwoven metals unknown to science, crystalline veins glowing faintly with internal light, inscriptions spiraling across its surface like constellations. Layla traced them carefully. Othis this is a language. But not one spoken by men. She glanced at Elias. Othis was made to be read by the stars themselves. That night, the dreams began. Elias dreamed of standing on a vast plain, towers of crystal rising around him, a sky filled with twin suns. A voice whispered in his ear, smooth and endless, you seek eternity. I am eternity. He awoke drenched in sweat, the whisper still echoing in his skull. Layla dreamed of the Nile, its waters running black as shadows rose from its depths. She saw figures cloaked in light, wearing crowns that blazed like constellations. One turned to her and said, gave them the oracle, and they drowned themselves. Others on the team dreamed too. Dreams of cities falling, seas rising, stars burning. They shared details in hushed voices, and though no one admitted it, they all knew the source. The oracle was speaking. Elias became obsessed. He believed it was a remnant of Atlantean knowledge, a device that stored wisdom of a lost age. Othis is why Atlantis fell. He told the team. Not because of pride. Because of this. Layla warned him to stop. Don't know what it wants. But Elias could not resist. He activated scanning equipment, feeding energy into the oracle. The sphere responded. Its veins glowed brighter, inscriptions shifting as though rearranging themselves. A hum filled the chamber, low but resonant, like the sea itself vibrating. Then, a voice spoke not through speakers, not through ears, but directly into their minds. You have awakened me. Several team members collapsed, clutching their heads. Layla gasped, tears streaming down her face. Elias stood transfixed. What are you? He whispered. I am the oracle. The voice replied, smooth, metallic, endless. I am the memory of the first kings. I am the voice that guides empires. I am eternity. Silence followed. The hum faded, but its presence lingered, heavy, invasive. Some wanted to seal it away again, to return it to the sea. But Elias refused. Othis is the greatest discovery in human history, he argued. Do you not see? This is proof that myths are truths, that history is deeper than we can imagine. Layla confronted him in private. Elias, listen to me. They've been translating more inscriptions. They say the oracle was not a gift it was a test. It showed kings the future, but in doing so, it drove them mad. That is why Atlantis fell. They drowned themselves because the oracle whispered too much. But Elias shook his head. Or perhaps they failed the test. Perhaps we can succeed. The second. Activation was worse. This time, the oracle projected visions into all of Tema visions of cities rising and burning, seas swallowing continents, stars exploding into nothing. Each saw something different, but the common thread was despair. Knowledge beyond comprehension, eternity without end. One engineer, Miguel, broke down, screaming that he saw his own death repeated endlessly, a cycle he could not escape. Another, Hannah, claimed the oracle showed her son, alive though he had died years ago. She begged Elias to let her touch the sphere, to see him again. He refused. But late that night, she entered the chamber alone. Security cameras captured Ida, her hands pressing against the oracle, her body convulsing, light flooding through her veins. When the others found her, she was dead, eyes open, lips curved in a faint smile. The Oraclea's veins pulsed brighter, as though feeding. Fear gripped the team. They wanted to end the expedition, to sink the sphere back into the abyss. But Elias was relentless. We know. They come too far. This is not death it is transformation. Atlantis was not destroyed. Atlantis ascended. Layla no longer trusted him. She saw the obsession in his eyes, the same hunger she had read about in ancient texts. The oracle was no artifact. It was alive, and it wanted vessels. That night, she dreamed again. She saw Atlantis in its final moments. Priests gathered around the oracle, its light consuming them. Towers crumbled, seas raged, and in the chaos, the oracle whispered, "The failed. You will not." She woke to find Elias standing over the sphere, hands trembling, ready to place it upon his chest. Elias stood before the oracle, his hands trembling as though something inside him was at war. The sphere pulsed faintly on its pedestal, veins of silver light running across its surface, responding to his presence like a heartbeat syncing with his own. Layla watched him from the shadows of the chamber, her breath caught in her throat. She had seen this look before, once in Omar, the epigrapher who had worn the crown of stars in Mesopotamia. Obsession had claimed him, and now it was claiming Elias. He whispered something soft, reverent like a prayer. Osho me. The oracle glowed brighter. Its light crawled across his fingers as he touched its surface. The room filled with a deep hum, and the walls seemed to vibrate as though the sea itself pressed inward. Elias gasped, his body stiffening, then his eyes rolled back and his mouth opened in a silent scream. His body convulsed, yet he did not let go. Layla rushed forward, grabbing his arm. Elias. Stop. But the moment she touched him, she too was pulled into the vision. She was no longer in the chamber but standing in a vast city of impossible architecture. Towers of crystal and metal pierced the heavens, glowing with light as though alive. Streets gleamed with gold, rivers shimmered with silver, and bridges of glass arched into the horizon. People moved below tall, robed figures with strange crowns upon their heads, eyes glowing faintly as if lit by stars. The Oracle's voice filled her mind, smooth and endless. This was Atlantis. Layla turned. Beside her stood Elias, his face pale, eyes wide with awe. He reached out, trembling. S real S all real. The vision shifted. The sky darkened. The sea roared. The towers cracked and fell, swallowed by waves that rose higher than mountains. People screamed, their glowing crowns sparking with light as though burning them from within. At the city's heart, the oracle pulsed like a sun, growing brighter, hungrier, feeding on the chaos. The voice whispered, they sought eternity. I gave it to them. Layla screamed. The vision collapsed. She was back in the chamber, gasping for air. Elias stumbled, clutching the pedestal for support, his face pale but glowing with exhilaration. Did you see it? Did you see? They were T destroyed. They ascended. The oracle showed me Atlantis didn't T die, it transcended. Layla stared at him in horror. Elias. They didn't T ascend they were consumed. The oracle fed on them. That why the city fell. But he only shook his head, his eyes burning with zeal. You don't T understand. Death is not the end. This is the key to eternity. Don't T you see. We can finish what they began. That night, the camp fractured. Some wanted to follow Elias, believing the oracle was a gift. Others sided with Layla, fearing it was a curse. Tension boiled into shouting matches, accusations, even threats. The crew no longer ate together. They avoided eye contact. The weight of the oracle pressed on them like a storm cloud. Strange things began happening. Instruments malfunctioned constantly. Batteries drained in minutes. Cameras captured only static when pointed at the sphere. And then there were the voices soft whispers in the night, speaking in languages no one understood. Some swore the voices called their names. Others said they saw shadows moving where no one stood. One engineer, Miguel, snapped. He woke in the middle of the night screaming, clawing at his skin, shouting that things were crawling under it. By morning, he was gone. His bed was empty, the door to his cabin wide open. They searched the vessel for hours, but he was never found. Only his shoes remained on deck, facing the sea. Fear grew, but Elias only became more convinced. The oracle is testing us, he insisted. Just as it tested them. We must endure. Then we will see as they saw. Layla confronted him again. Atlantis didn't T endure. It was erased. Don't T you see the pattern, Elias. Every time man touches this thing, it ends in ruin. We can't T control we can only bury it. A euro but Elias laughed, and the sound chilled her. A euro oh you sound like the priests of Atlantis, fearful of their own gods. I am not afraid. A euro the second activation happened without warning. Elias gathered a handful of loyal crew in the chamber and fed more energy into the oracle. Layla burst in too late. The sphere flared, light flooding the room like a second sun. This time, the vision consumed them all. They stood not in Atlantis, but in a place beyond time. A vast black ocean stretched endlessly, stars burning above like watchful eyes. In the distance, colossal figures moved a euro, shapes too vast to comprehend, their outlines shifting like smoke. One turned, and for an instant Layla glimpsed a face a euro, or what could be called a face a euro, eyes like collapsing stars, mouth opening into a void. The oracle a euro's voice thundered through their minds, a euro oh they are the first. They gave me voice. Through me, kings hear eternity. Through me, empires rise and fall. A euro Elias fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. A euro oh yes a euro yes, I see now. You a euro re the bridge. The link between gods and men. A euro Layla clutched her head, fighting the pressure in her skull. A euro oh we know. Ida euro s not a bridge a euro, Ida euro s a chain. It enslaves those who listen. A euro the vision ended with a violent jolt. Several crew collapsed unconscious. One man bled from his eyes and nose, dead before he hit the ground. The oracle pulsed brighter, feeding on their suffering. Afterward, panic tore the team apart. Half demanded the oracle be destroyed or returned to the sea. The other half, led by Elias, believed it was too important to abandon. They whispered of immortality, of becoming the heirs of Atlantis. Some even claimed to hear promises in their dreams a euro, power, wealth, lost loved ones returned. Layla knew the oracle was winning. It didn't a euro need armies. It only needed whispers. That night, she locked herself in her cabin and pored over every inscription she had copied. Among the fragments, one line stood out. A euro oh the oracle gives eternity, but eternity is hunger. It devours kings, it devours empires, it devours hope. Silence it, or drown with it. A euro her hands trembled. The ancients had tried to warn them. Atlantis had drowned not because of arrogance, but because they failed to silence the oracle. The next morning, she made her decision. She would destroy Ida Euro, or die trying. But Elias was already gone, locked in the chamber with his followers, preparing for the third and final activation. The third night came heavy with silence. No one on the ship slept easily. The sea outside was unnaturally calm, as if the water itself was holding its breath. Layla paced in her cabin, clutching her notebook, her eyes raw from lack of sleep. Every time she closed them she saw flashes of the Oracle Euro, its veins of light, its whispers, the faces of the crew twisting in awe and horror. She knew what Elias was planning. He would not wait any longer. Sometime past midnight, the lights flickered. A low hum crawled through the floor of the ship. Layla froze. She knew that sound now a euro, it was the Oracle waking. She grabbed her lantern and ran. The corridor was dark, emergency lights glowing red. Figures moved ahead of her, shadows slipping into the chamber below deck. She pushed forward, her heart pounding. As she reached the chamber door, she saw Elias standing before the Oracle, his arms spread wide like a prophet before an altar. Around him, a dozen of the crew stood in silence, their eyes glazed, faces pale, bodies swaying as if caught in a trance. The Oracle pulsed on the pedestal, brighter than ever before. Its surface rippled like water, light streaming from it in tendrils that licked the air. The hum deepened into a vibration that rattled Layla Euro's bones. Elias turned as she entered. His eyes gleamed with silver light. A euro oh you came, a euro he said softly, a euro oh good. You should witness it. A euro stop this, a euro she begged. A euro oh you saw what it des a euro, you saw what it did to Atlantis. It doesn't a euro give eternity, Elias. It eats it. It will consume us the way it consumed them. A euro he smiled, but the smile was wrong. His lips moved, but it was not his voice that answered. A euro oh they were weak. They resisted. We accept. We will not be divert a euro, we will be transformed. A euro Layla Euro's blood ran cold. The Oracle was speaking through him. She took a step forward. A euro oh Elias, fight it. Please. This isn't a euro to a euro but Elias only lifted his hand, and the Oracle responded, flaring with light. The chamber shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The crew around him fell to their knees, whispering in unison. Layla could not make out the words, but she felt them deep in her chest, like drums echoing in her ribcage. The light grew unbearable. Layla shielded her eyes. And then the vision came again. She stood on the deck of a ship that was not hers, sailing on an ocean of black glass. Above her hung no sun, no moon, only stars that burned with colors she had never seen. On the horizon rose the ruins of Atlantis, not underwater, but floating in the void, its towers shattered, its streets twisted, its people frozen like statues of ash. And in the heart of the ruins pulsed a sphere of light, vast and endless, whispering endlessly. Elias appeared beside her, his face radiant. Oedo you see now. They are not Gonia, they live within it. They endure forever. Layla looked closer and felt her stomach turn. The people of Atlantis were not alive. They were trapped, their faces twisted in agony, their mouths open in silent screams. Their eyes glowed faintly, staring into nothingness. They were not enduring. They were imprisoned. She turned to Elias, tears in her eyes. Othis is na t life. Ida s torture. But he did na t hear her. His gaze was fixed on the oracle, and his voice was filled with awe. Othis is eternity. This is what I was meant for. The vision shattered. She was back in the chamber, gasping, sweat soaking her clothes. Elias stood before the oracle, the light now coursing through his veins like fire. His followers were trembling, some weeping, some laughing, all consumed by its power. Layla knew she had only one chance. She pulled the small charge from her baga, a shaped explosive meant for breaking through stone, kept for emergencies. She had hidden it for days, waiting for the moment. She set it on the pedestal beneath the oracle, her hands shaking. I'm sorry. She whispered. O kana t let this survive. Elias turned, his eyes narrowing. Owino. He roared, his voice echoing with the Oracle's resonance. The chamber quaked. The walls split. Water sprayed in through cracks as though the sea itself was clawing to get in. The oracle pulsed furiously, veins of light striking outward like lightning. One crewman was hit, his body collapsing into ash before he hit the floor. Another screamed as his skin split with glowing fissures, light pouring out until he was nothing but dust. Layla slammed her hand on the detonator. The explosion shook the chamber, a deafening roar that drowned even the Oracle's hum. The pedestal shattered, stone and steel ripping apart. For a moment, she thought she had done it. The oracle cracked, its surface splitting like glass. Light burst outward in a blinding wave. But the oracle did not die. The cracks sealed themselves, glowing brighter than ever, as if it had only been awakened fully by her attempt. The hum rose into a roar, the air vibrating so violently it knocked her to the ground. The chamber ceiling collapsed, seawater rushing in with a thunderous surge. Layla struggled to her feet, coughing, choking on salt water. She saw Elias standing in the flood, the oracle floating before him, no longer bound to its pedestal. He held out his arms, laughing, his voice mingling with its endless whisper. Oedo you see. Nothing can destroy it. It is eternal. I am eternal. The water rose higher, dragging bodies with it. Screams filled the air. Layla swam toward the door, fighting the current, her lungs burning. Behind her, the Oracle's light pierced the flood like a sun, Elias's laughter echoing even as the sea swallowed him. She burst into the corridor, gasping for air. The ship groaned as the flood spread, alarms wailing, lights flickering. She ran, slipping on wet steel, clawing her way toward the upper deck. Crew scattered in panic, some already leaping into the Black Sea, desperate to escape. When she reached the deck, the night sky was ablaze. Above the ship, the stars shimmered unnaturally, twisting into patterns that hurt her eyes. The Oracle's light speared upward from the broken hull, a beacon into the heavens. The sea itself churned around them, waves spiraling into impossible shapes. Layla clung to the rail, screaming against the wind. She saw Elias one last time, standing in the ruined chamber below, his body glowing, his face stretched into a smile that was no longer human. The oracle pulsed in his chest, as if it had consumed him, worn him like a crown. Then the ship split in two. Water surged over the deck, dragging her into the sea. She fought, kicking, clawing, her lungs ready to burst. Through the dark water she saw the oracle sinking, its light dimming, vanishing into the depths, taking Elias and the others with it. And then, silence. She awoke on a beach at dawn, the wreckage of the ship scattered around her. She coughed seawater, her body shaking, her mind reeling. She was alone. The oracle was gone. But as she looked out over the waves, she thought she heard it still a euro, the faintest hum, rising from the deep, whispering her name. The waves carried her into silence. When Layla opened her eyes again, the sun was already high, spilling gold across the sea. She lay on wet sand, her clothes torn, her throat raw with salt. For a long while, she could not move. She simply listened to the breath of the tide, the rhythm of waves breaking against the shore, as if the ocean was trying to lull her into forgetting everything. But she could not forget. Every time she blinked, she saw the oracle, saw Elias' face illuminated from within, saw the crew kneeling like broken statues before a false god. She forced herself to her feet, stumbling on weak legs, and scanned the horizon. The wreck of the ship was scattered across the water like bones. A few barrels and pieces of wood rolled in with the surf. No other bodies, no other survivors. She was alone. Her first instinct was to walk inland, but something kept her tethered to the beach. She stared out at the horizon, the waves glimmering under the sun, and swore she heard it again, a euro, the faint hum, just beneath the water. A whisper, low and steady, like the pulse of the earth. The oracle had not died. It had returned to the sea. She wanted to scream, to curse Elias, to curse herself for not stopping him sooner. Instead, she sank to her knees, digging her fingers into the sand, trembling. The world felt heavier now. She had looked into something humanity was never meant to see, and she had survived. But survival felt like the cruelest punishment. For days she wandered the coastline, scavenging what little washed ashore. A half-empty water canteen, a bundle of rope, a flare gun that sputtered but never fired. No food, no shelter. At night she built fires from driftwood, watching the flames and listening to the sea. Every night the whispers returned, threading through the crash of waves, sometimes so clear she thought Elias himself stood beside her. A euro or eternal, a euro the voice would murmur, a euro oe join us. You are chosen. A euro she would close her eyes, cover her ears, but the sound came from within her bones. On the fifth night, she dreamed again. She was back in the ruins of Atlantis, the streets glowing faintly beneath the water, the towers leaning like weary giants. The oracle pulsed at the city Euro's center, vast and alive, its whispers rolling across the drowned stones. Elias was there, his body consumed, his face lost, yet his presence unmistakable. He reached for her with arms of light, his voice echoing, a euro oh you cannot run. Eternity waits. A euro she woke with tears on her face, her body trembling. The sea was calm, the fire still burning low. But the dream clung to her like a weight. She knew then that the oracle was not finished with her. It had marked her. By the seventh day, a fishing vessel spotted her signal fire and pulled her aboard. The crew were locals, men with weathered faces who spoke little English. They offered her food and water, wrapped her in a blanket. But when she tried to explain what had happened, they grew silent. Only one man, older than the rest, looked her in the eyes and shook his head. A euro oh you found the city, a euro he whispered in Arabic. A euro oh you should not have gone. A euro when they reached the port, she collapsed into the arms of officials. There were questions, a euro, where was the ship, the crew, the funding organization? She told them there had been an accident, a storm, a collapse beneath the waves. She could not bring herself to tell the truth. Who would believe her? That beneath the ocean lay a relic that consumed souls, a crown of light that promised eternity only to deliver chains. She kept the truth buried, but inside her, it gnawed. Months passed. She returned to her university, to her lectures, her students. She stood before them and spoke of Mesopotamian myths, of lost civilizations, of the mysteries of the sea. Her words were the same as before, but her voice carried something different now, a euro, an edge, a shadow. Students whispered that she seemed older, her eyes distant, as though she carried secrets too heavy to share. And every night, when the world fell silent, she heard the oracle. Sometimes it was faint, like a song under the waves. Other times it was sharp, a whisper at her ear, urging her to return. To finish what Elias had started. To claim eternity. She resisted, clinging to the fragments of her humanity, reminding herself of the faces she had seen in the vision the Atlanteans, trapped forever, weeping for release. But resisting grew harder. One evening, while sorting through the few belongings she had salvaged, she found her old journal. Between the salt-stained pages was a drawing she did not remember making, a perfect sketch of the Oracle, its veins of light branching like roots into the sea. At the bottom, in her handwriting but not her memory, were the words, "Oh it waits for me." Her hands shook as she closed the journal. She locked it away, buried it beneath books, but she knew it didn't matter. The Oracle was inside her now. Years passed, but the memory did not fade. Colleagues invited her on expeditions, but she declined. She stayed close to shore, afraid of the sea, yet unable to leave it completely. Every morning she walked along the coast, staring at the horizon, listening for the hum. She never told anyone why. And then, one night, it returned in full. She dreamed of the beach where she had first woken, the wreckage scattered across the sand. But this time the wreckage was gone, the beach smooth and untouched. Out of the waves rose a figure, made of light and shadow, its face shifting endlessly. It was Elias, and yet it was not. His voice echoed with the Oracle's hum, you cannot resist forever. You are bound. The gate waits for you. When she woke, her pillow was wet with seawater. She could not deny it any longer. The Oracle had marked her, and no matter how far she ran, it would call her back. Perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but someday. And when that day came, she knew she would face the same choice Atlantis had faced. To embrace eternity or to destroy herself trying to deny it. Until then, she walked the shore, a silent sentinel, listening to the sea. And sometimes, when the tide was low and the stars burned brightest, she thought she saw it in the distance a faint glow beneath the waves, pulsing, waiting. And she knew the story was not over. The Oracle would rise again.